doing.
Now, between season 1 and season 2, I saw a great evolution in Futurama. Now, was that because, how many of the writers did you bring from The Simpsons over there, or did after the first season a few came over, or how was that?
It wasn't not actually a big change in the writers, but this is really something to do with the actors that you're bringing up, and the fact that this is a really interesting thing about animated shows that you bring up. I'm glad you mentioned this. And again, I just sat in on Phil's panel, and he touched on this. There's a strange feedback loop between the writers and the cast on an animated show. It's not like a live show where you go before an audience and you hear the audience is laughing at something and they're not, and you make changes that night, an hour later. On an animated show, you make your show, it airs a year later, and then you kind of get a sense of what's actually going on, and it's this long loop. Well, what I would say happened between season 1 and season 2 is, yes, we did, as the writers, we kind of figured out a little more about what kinds of stories were working and what weren't, but also we heard what sounded funny from our cast members, and the voices really crystallized, and we began to write things for the voice of Dr. Zoidberg that Billy came up with, the voice of Hermes that Phil Lamar eventually came to. So, you know, when the show started, we were even writing scripts before we had the cast. So you write to those things, and then the show suddenly gets better. So that's about season 2, not a coincidence. So I agree with you, and I think the show kind of got better as it went along due to this long feedback loop. So, thank you. Hi.
It seems that with the last person, you've answered quite somewhat some of the questions that I had. I was going to ask you originally how many writers you had in total when you began, and how many of them were still around. You say that. How many did you have before originally?
I'll give you a little rundown on how these things work. The Simpsons has a large staff, so I'm going to give you that as sort of the starting point, so then you can take pity on us. The Simpsons probably has often around 18 writers, I would say, something like that. And typically we'll be working in 2 groups at any given time on 2 different episodes in different stages of production. So Futurama, at our peak when we were on originally, I believe we had 13 writers, so about maybe 2/3 of that, counting me, and at this point in our history we have 7 writers. So that is, for a primetime show, a comedy of any kind, a pretty small number of writers. And again, these are all really experienced people and who know what we're doing, and there's more efficiency now. But we do have one other thing we do have to do to make up for that is we have to have a few more scripts written by people who aren't there every day dealing with the day-to-day stuff. So, but even then, we've been really lucky because we have some even more Futurama writers available. For example, Lou Morton, who's written many of the classic episodes, is writing some of our episodes, even though he's not there every day this year. So we're finding new ways to do the things. But we have 7 people who are basically there day in, day out right now, including some people, names you may recognize, like Ken Keeler has always been kind of my right-hand man and runs things when I'm not there, like yesterday when I was here. So he is back, and I think the tone of the show is going to be very much the same as it has been.
Okay, do you serve as head writer, or is there somebody else who's head writer? And how involved is Matt Groening in each of the episodes? Is he involved at all in each of the episodes? Does he sit there and...
He is. He's got, I'm there, I'm the head writer. That's my main job. I cannot act, I cannot draw, I definitely cannot compose music. And so there's all these things that in animation it's the nature of animation that there's all these very different skills, and you're entirely reliant on these other people to do their job. And when you get great people together, it's super satisfying when you see the end product, because it's like, okay, we did the script, and then we handed it off to the cast, then we handed it off to the animators, we handed it off to the composer, Chris Ting. So when you see the final thing, you go like, oh my God, it's so satisfying, because everyone only saw their little part. So what was I starting to answer? What was the beginning of it? Oh, the head writer thing. Yeah. So yeah, my main job is as head writer. I work with the editor and all these other people and kind of interact on behalf of the writers. Yeah, technically the co-developer. I never like to claim credit because Matt Groening had the original idea, and therefore he gets the title creator, and rightfully so. And then as far as Matt Groening's involvement, one really good thing about this new set of episodes we're doing is that Fox has put us back on the Fox movie lot in LA, which is where the Simpsons offices are, and we're about 100 yards from the Simpsons office. So Matt has 2 offices 100 yards apart from each other, and it's good for him because he can go out and have lunch and be telling us that he's at The Simpsons and be telling The Simpsons that he's at Futurama. So he always has a good excuse. He loves it. He loves the setup. But in reality, he has to be back and forth, obviously, and he still draws his Life in Hell comic strip also. So he's got a lot of things to do, but he likes to hang out at Futurama, I would say. You know, Simpsons has been on for 20 years. I think Futurama still, even after 6 years, whatever, has the novelty factor going for it. So he does like to hang out with us, I would say, when he gets the opportunity. So he's there and involved with every episode. And in fact, the first 2 episodes, he even will be credited as the co-writer of the story. He was instrumental in these first 2 stories coming back when it was really just a couple of us, me and him and Ken Keeler, talking about how we're going to bring the show back. So very deeply involved.
And the writers are shared? The Simpsons and the Futurama writers are shared?
No. Entirely different. It's, you know, it's to work on either of these shows is a grueling full-time job and a very satisfying job, but you're there in the morning, you're there at night, you're staying for dinner a lot of the time and sometimes weekends, and you cannot do 2 things. Now, a bunch of writers have worked on both shows at one time or another, but not on both at the same time. So I worked on The Simpsons, and Ken Keeler worked on The Simpsons, for example. Matt Groening obviously goes back and forth, but and we have stocked The Simpsons with 3. There are 3 ex-Futurama writers who now work for The Simpsons full time, so it goes back and forth.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
First off, I want to thank you for making the only animated TV show I can think of that's made me cry twice.
Yes! Nothing makes me happier than to hear people admit that they cried watching a crazy cartoon about robots and monsters. So that's very, it's actually very, very pleasing when, and I'm half joking, but it really means something if you can get people to be sad at the cartoon, because that means that people are really buying into the emotions of a lobster or a robot or a frozen man. So I actually take that as a real serious compliment, and I really appreciate it when people say it. So thank you.
Also, I personally don't agree with this, but on the internet, like, a lot of people feel there was a drop in quality from the regular season to the DVD films. Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, the DVDs were just a different process than the episodes, and part of the nature of it is we have a 90-minute format to occupy, which we were not doing before. So we face a question at that point: do we want to try to keep up the pace of jokes, basically, of the original show, which is kind of about 2 jokes per second or whatever it is, or do we want to try to create a more movie-like experience? So what we decided to do is try to have a little more music, some more epic space shots and things like that. So it does have a different tone. I will certainly, by design, I would say it has a different tone. Now, to me, it's just a matter of, well, what do you want to do? Can you stand to watch 4 extremely highly paced episodes in a row? I don't know. So if we had done it at that pace, in other words, for 90 minutes, people may have said, oh, it was, you know, our heads exploded after 37 minutes. So, I don't know. We tried new things, and to each his own. But some of them work. Sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't. And it's the same with the episodes. But you know, we succeed, as Phil Lamar said. If we succeed in a baseball batting average of 300 or 400, pretty good for a TV show. So I'm reasonably satisfied with how things came out.